Hey guys, welcome back. This is the third video in a series on how to read in a file in C++. In this video, we're going to cover how to read in a comma-separated list. Here on the right, I have the file that we're actually going to be using, just so you can see, and I can show you exactly what it's doing. This file on the left here, this reading in a file 2, we covered in our last video. I've made a few changes to the comment out stuff, so don't look at that just yet, but everything else should look just about the same. We will need two more libraries for this one. We're going to need this stream library, stands for string stream library, and also the string library. So we need both those to be included for this video. And then here we've got our input file stream class, and I've declared an instantiation of that class, my file stream. I'm passing in the file name, and then beneath that, this if statement right here is just to confirm that our file is indeed open, and if it's not, it will let us know. And then of course I've closed my file down here just to make sure that it's closed. We've deallocated those resources. These variables here we talked about in the first video, but they're just corresponding to all the information we're going to need to read in: first name, last name, this temp string because we have age multiple times, and also date of birth multiple times, and we don't really need to store it as anything, so I just used a variable that I called temp string, and then date of birth for the actual date of birth. And we're storing age as an integer, so that would be these right here, these integers of ages. So and again, this data is made up. It doesn't actually make any sense. If your date of birth was what these are, that wouldn't be your actual age. It's just something I made up. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to be inside of a while loop for all this video. This is all the code we're going to cover. Don't worry, I'll step to it line by line for us. The first thing we're going to use is getline. If you don't know anything about getline, I encourage you to check out stop now and go check out the video on that we've done. I'll try to talk about it enough that maybe you won't have to if you're not super familiar with it. Excuse me, I'm getting a text. So getline, we're giving two arguments to getline. The first one here is we're telling it where to look to get the line, and we're using my file stream, which is part of this if stream, which is an if stream class that we declared earlier. And then we're telling it where to store that line once it gets it, and that's why I've used this string, called line. Okay, and the reason I chose that is because literally what getline is going to do, it's going to read in this entire line, and if we don't give it any other arguments, it's going to read to a new line operator, which is hidden, and so that's what's going to be stored in line. And then we're going to call this inside a while loop, so the next time we call this getline, it's going to read in that, and so on and so forth. So it should call this 4 times. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and uncomment out all of this code, but don't worry, we're going to walk through it line by line. So the first thing I have here is this string stream. So this is a class that we're going to use, and so this SS is just an instance of that class, and you can think of it, and it works for us in this situation much the same way as this input file stream class. Okay. This my file stream is a class, just like SS is a class, and what we're passing into it is information. Here it's a whole file, which we're opening a whole file rather with it, and in this one we're using string stream to manipulate this string called line. Okay, so we're passing this into the constructor, which is kind of what we did in both situations. And then this class is going to help us, just like this input file stream, do a lot of things that would be very hard to do if we had to do them, manually on our own. So this next line here, I'm calling getline, and now I'm calling it on this string stream class, SS. Okay, and then the second thing we're calling getline. This remember, in getline, the second argument always has to be a string. So you're telling it where to go to get the information in the first argument. The second argument, you're telling it where to store that information once it gets it, and this always has to be a string. And then the third optional argument is where to stop. So when we called getline the first time in this while loop, we did not give it a third argument, and so it just goes to the new line operator. Well, now we want it to stop on a comma, and to tell it that it is indeed just a comma, we use single quotes for a character. So this could be any character if you wanted to. This could be an A, this could be a /, this could be anything you want. So if you had a list separated by some random character, this is how you could do it. But again, ours is a comma separated list, so we'll do that comma. And so what this did, just to go back through this, is when we called getline the first time, it pulled this and it stored it in line. And then we passed that line into our string stream class, SS, and then we called getline on that string stream class, and we told getline to read in from that and read in until it reaches a comma. So the first thing it's going to read in is this Jonathan. And remember that there's still essentially a pointer, so that once we call getline once and we're telling it to separate on a comma, it's going to read till it gets to that comma. And once it gets past that comma, it's going to stop. And there's still going to be a pointer starting here now. So then the next time I call getline on this same SS string stream class, it is going to be starting right here in front of the T in Turner. And then we have the same syntax here, so it's going to read in again till it gets to a comma. It's going to read the comma, but it's not going to include it. So Turner will be passed in, and that's what's going to be saved under last name. Okay, and then we called it again on temp string, which is going to be age, which we don't want to save. That's why we used our temp string. And then the next thing we called it on is this 18 here. Now we want this 18 to be stored as an integer, but as we talked about, string stream, the second operator always has to be a string. So we used our myString, which we declared earlier. We could have also used temp string, but I just wanted to use something different to make it clear. And we're storing that 18 under myString, and then here we're using our age, which is our integer that we declared up here, and we're just using our stoi. And if you are not familiar with the string to integer function, feel free. There's a video on that on casting variables. Is what you want to look up. And then we're giving it the argument myString, which we just saved here, and that's going to convert to an integer for us. Then again, we're calling getline again on our string stream SS, and this is temp string, so it's this date of birth, which we don't need to save. And then I'm calling getline one last time, and this time we're saving all of this information here under date of birth. And date of birth is a string, but in this situation, I was just trying to think of like what would be the most complicated, convoluted thing that someone might ask you to do for homework or whatever. But maybe this last part here, maybe they want this without any backslashes, or I'm sorry, are those backslashes, forward slashes? Anyways, without any slashes. So there's a couple ways you could do that. This is probably, I guess, the simplest one, and it uses something that we've already talked about. So we've got our DOB string here, and I'm setting it equal to itself, but each time I'm using this dot substring. Okay, and remember dot substring, the first argument here is where to start, and then the second one is how many characters to read. And if you use a plus operator with strings, hopefully you know this already, but no worries if you don't, all it does is it concatenates. So it puts, essentially what you're doing is you're telling it to read these first two characters, and then we're saying plus, and then now we're starting at the third character, which is going to be this 0, and read in two characters, so 0 and 1, and all it's going to do is essentially take out that slash there. And then we've done it again to take out the last slash. So that's what we've done. And then here I've printed out age on each of these. You could print out really any variable. Normally, of course, at this point, you're going to be passing all of these into a function and then doing something with it. But let's just go ahead and build and run and see, oh, our file failed to open. Well, that's a problem. So let's look up here in our input file stream, and I can already see the problem. We didn't put .txt, and by we, I mean me. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead and build and run again. Okay, cool. Now we've got our ages printing out, and let's confirm those. We've got 18, 20, 23, and 22. Cool. Looks like it works. We don't get any errors for this string to integer, so that's good. And let's maybe prove that date of birth, that worked. Let me prove to you guys. So we'll build and run that. Cool. Looks like we got it. 120198, 120198. Yep, they all look right. So that's it for this video. That's how to read in a comma separator list. If anybody encounters reading in a file and there's more complicated, they ran into something that's more complicated than what I covered in this video, please leave a comment below, because I want to cover any and every situation that you might encounter just using a basic .txt file, doing homework again. If you have any questions or you have any other issues with something like that, please let me know and I will do another video and try and cover it for you. So, all right, guys, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.